Welcome back to the Full Force Fathers podcast. Dave, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm great. We're recording this the morning after UConn won their 6th national championship. So how could I not be doing great? We called it. We've been talking about it for months, and it came true. It's awesome.
Dude, 6 titles since 99.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. The fact that we are this spoiled with UConn hoops is truly amazing. And you can't forget, like, there was a 7 or 8 year stretch there where they did nothing. They were absolutely terrible. And to the point at which I thought, UConn hoops might never be UConn hoops again. But here they are. Like Hurley said last night, the last 25, 30 years, UConn has ruled the college basketball landscape. So hats off to them. They dominated the entire season. They dominated the entire postseason now for 2 postseasons in a row. I don't think there's any doubt that UConn is the clear top program in college basketball right now.
They are the premier top program in college basketball with the premier top coach. And I want to back up and say something. As you know, I thought, and I own this, I thought Danny Hurley was a terrible hire. I thought in the beginning, I didn't like his arrogance. I didn't like his cockiness. I thought he was a terrible hire. And I'm on the record of saying that I was against it. And I didn't think he was the right fit for the job. And I couldn't have been more wrong, which I own. I couldn't have been more wrong on that. And that's okay. You're wrong about things, but owning them and admitting to them. But I want to think the most impressive statistic in this run of these last couple of years. I mean, remember last year they had that shitty little blip in the Big East where they weren't good. They have only lost, one non-conference game in 2 years, and they've played powerhouses. And that loss was at Kansas earlier in this year without Stephon Castle. If Stephon Castle had played in that game, we would have beaten Kansas. We should have beaten him. We blew a lead late in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100% right. And the wins, other than the Kansas game, have all been by double digits.
It's insane.
I saw something the other day this was before the national championship game. If you had bet $100 on UConn the first round of the tournament last year and rolled your winnings, just kept betting the spread, taking UConn to cover, heading into the national championship game, you would have been up to $117,000. That's how dominant they were. They covered every spread. They were favored by 6.5 last night against Purdue, and they ended up beating them by 15. Like we had said, I had said that to you pregame was going to be a 15-point win, and they just took care of business. This team, we talked a little bit about on the last episode, which UConn team is the greatest of all time. I don't think there's any question now. This team, to me, is either number 1 or 2. They're probably number 2, but the way they dominated teams for the entire season, they looked like they were an NBA team against college teams most times. The way that they ran their offense, the way they played defense.
They just purely outplayed everybody.
Everybody. And the confidence was there from the players to the coaches. You could hear it in Hurley's post. He's like, we just have to stay true to who we are. This is who we are. We're going to win. We're going to win the basketball game. Okay. And they did every time out.
Yeah. It's to play with that level of confidence is so, I mean, it's unrivaled because they literally buried good teams. Like last night in the national championship game, other than just being a fan, which is short for fanatic, other than being a fan and just regular old nervous energy like that you have, I was never once worried that they weren't going to beat Purdue. And it's no offense to Purdue. They play in the Big Ten. There's a reason why no Big Ten team has won the national championship since 2000 when Michigan State did it. Because it's not that good of a basketball conference. Football, Michigan, Ohio State, we get it. Penn State sometimes. But there is nothing in that basketball. I mean, Wisconsin's had good teams, couldn't win the title. I mean, nobody goes to the Big Ten to play basketball. And I just never was scared of oh shit, this is Purdue. They may beat us. That game always felt secure in our hands. Am I right?
You're 100% right. I mean, we had talked about it leading up to the game. I had said to you a couple times day of, my confidence level was eerily high, almost to the point at which that scared me a little bit. Like I was never nervous this entire season. I was just never nervous. This team always just got it done. And even last night, we had talked about this too. Like, teams keep it competitive for a little while. Eventually, UConn wears you down. The teams are going to miss a couple shots, not get a couple rebounds, and UConn's going to go on a quick 7-8-0 run, and all of a sudden the game's out of reach and it's gone. And that's exactly what happened last night.
What makes it crazy to me is two things. I'm going to give you credit where credit's due. You told me the other night that the Alabama game was the national championship game, and I wholeheartedly believe that because I think Alabama probably would have ran Purdue off the floor as well. I think they would have smoked Purdue. Purdue would have had trouble covering. Alabama had some bigs. They may have been able to guard Edey. Maybe probably not as good as Clingan. Clingan, for as much as statistically he wasn't amazing, what he did to Edey, he beat the crap out of him. He was not afraid to be physical with him, and it made all the difference in the fucking world. But the fact that this team, this is going to sound crazy, and this may sound a little arrogant, I just think it's confidence. How this team didn't go 40-0 is fucking way beyond me. How did, I know Creighton shot 1,000,000% from the three-point line that night when we got blown up by Creighton. The Seton Hall game, Clingan was hurt, and the Kansas game, you know what I mean,
Castle was hurt.
Castle was hurt. It's amazing to me, in a weird way, that they didn't go 40-0. That's how good this team was. And to back it up to what you said, this is not one or two. I still think it's so weird to rank teams and rank eras because the 99 team had the best UConn record ever, 34-2. Okay. They beat of all the games, of all the teams that won national championships. Now there's 6 of them. They beat the best team in the final. UConn was not the favorite going into that basketball game. That Duke team, if you remember, with Trajan Langdon and Elton Brand and William Avery, they blew everybody out up until that point. And we were a significant underdog in that title game. And we shot, as Khalid Al-Amin said, we shocked the world. That, to me, is why that team, that's the argument for that team to be number one. The 2004 team was Ben Gordon and Emeka Okafor, went 2-3 in the draft. And that team was so much better than Georgia Tech when they beat them. They lost to Georgia Tech, got the revenge game. That team you could argue, that has a spot, right? With Talik Brown and that squad. The team that never did anything was the Rudy Gay team that was probably the most talented athletically UConn ever had. And they lost that George Mason game when they should have won the final. The other team that lost in the final four to Michigan State was a better team than that Michigan State team and lost. They're 12-1 in Final Fours. Let's be real. 12-1. 6-0 now in the national title game. I mean, that is an absurd statistic. It's the greatest of all time. It's the greatest winning percentage in the Final Four of all time. The 11 and the 14 teams, no matter what, fall to the bottom of the 6. No matter what. The 11, nobody wants to talk about that 2011 team. That game was atrocious. They beat Butler. It was it was funny listening to ESPN last night. Reese Davis, who you love, and I love Reese Davis. He literally said on live television when they were showing the list of the championship teams, he said, let's just forget about that 2011 team. He goes, because that was a terrible basketball game. And for him to say that, speak that truth, because that game was a terrible basketball game. But I also want to say something. One of the more impressive wins of the 6. In 2014, we beat Kentucky. And that was an absolute star-studded, Calipari-esque, one-and-done NBA. Julius Randle, the twin boys. You know what I mean? And that team, we just had leadership. Shabazz was a leader on that team. And we had no business beating the talent on that Kentucky team. So of all the wins outside of 99, that 14 team might have been the most impressive win in the title game. Because 23-24, for as great as they were, it was almost a given. You told me last year when the 2023 team, I did not believe in that team as much as I did in this year's team. The Marquette game in the semifinals of the Big East Championship really turned me off. Remember, I told you that. I said, this is a recipe for disaster because that's how you beat UConn. You high press intensity like Shaka does. But they backed it up, blew everybody out in the tournament, and it was expected. And then they blew this year, like I said, I'm shocked a little bit that they lost any games this year because they were so good. And injuries for sure played a part in why they didn't go at least 39-1. because the Creighton game wasn't close. It was never close.
No, yeah, they just got beaten in that game, and we can't forget that when Creighton went to Gamble, they got beat by 20. So that was a payback game. We always have had trouble playing at Creighton. We haven't won there. It's like it's like UConn's kryptonite. That being said, yeah, this team was just flat out dominant. If they were healthy, I do think they would have gone 39-1. They do hold the record now for most wins in a season by a UConn team at 37. This team was just incredible. It is fantastic that they got a chance to play the number 2 team in the country the last 2 years in Purdue. I mean, how many weeks of the season did different analysts have Purdue ahead of UConn as the best team in the country? And I just love that they came out. They were able to do it against the best team in the country compared to them, and they annihilated them. They took them apart piece by piece throughout the entire game. Everybody on UConn stepped up in some way or another. Their top 7 guys all contributed heavily to that win. I had said it before earlier in the show about the if you bet the line on UConn going into the Final Four, you would have been up to 117,000. I just got an update. Had you bet them from start of last tournament through this tournament, you would have won $227,000 if you kept rolling it over. It's not a bad payday on UConn there, but one of the things that their offense was fantastic. Probably the best offense we've seen in college basketball in a very long time. The way that they run their sets, their motion, just the different cuts, the hoops, the pick and rolls, everything that they do, it's absolutely incredible. And I never saw any other team in college basketball do anything like it, which was awesome. But the defense, dude, that Big East grinded out defense. A guy like Stephon Castle, whoever the best player is on the other team, he locked them up. If he had to got a couple fouls and take him out, DR would come in off the bench and lock him up. Like, these guys were great. Klingon, best interior defensive line or defensive big man in the country. No question about it. Matt Painter said it in his post-game presser last night. He said, we've played teams in the Big Ten with great defenders. We played teams in the NCAA tournament with great defenders, and we were able to beat all of them. We weren't able to beat a team that has great defenders all the way through the last man on their roster, all the way through the bench. Guys coming in could just step into the role, and it was like nobody ever left the game. That was the thing. This team was so deep, offensively, defensively. That was the difference. They were so deep. They took on the attitude and the just sort of the grit of their coach. You saw it in the way that they played from start to finish. This team was never cocky. Everybody always was talking about, well, now you got a week where everybody's going to be blowing up your phone, telling you how great you are, or are you actually going to come out and compete? This team competes every minute of every single game. I don't remember one game, even the Creighton game where they were getting blown out. Mm-hmm. They played their asses off the entire game. It wasn't like they just mailed it in. I mean, they won high-scoring games. They won low-scoring games. They won every kind of game you could imagine this season. And this team, it was so fun to watch. And I love the fact that Hurley already came out and said, I'm not interested in going anywhere else. I'm coming back for the three-peat. We're trying to build a dynasty here. And you know what? I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, number one. Number two, I think we can officially get off of this analytic bullshit train that the world has become in sports, whether it's baseball or it's fucking football or it's, go in football. The percentages say you go for it on 4th and 1 inside your own 20. And if you hand it off, it's 32.6% chance to get, like, who are these fucking guys that come up with this bullshit? Ken Palm and this and that. Sometimes it just comes down to the good old-fashioned eye test. UConn was the best offensive team and the best defensive team. The reason why they weren't number one in Ken Palm both, they were offensively but not defensively, is because they always blow everybody out, so defense means nothing at the end of the game for them. Usually, by 5 minutes into the second half, the game is already over. Last night was the perfect example in the national championship game. I would argue the game was over at halftime. When you looked at how winded Edey was, he tried to come out of the game. 15 seconds he sat on the bench because it was an instant and one for Klingon. They literally, I think what they did is they exposed the athleticism of Purdue. They exposed the lack of depth for Purdue, but they really exposed the size. The size absolutely was a problem last night. I know you got a 7'4" guy, and I know he ate, but we have to take his numbers with a grain of salt. My dad gave a great prediction before this game because he was like, UConn's going to blow him out. And I'm like, I feel the same way. He said, let Edey get 40 and 20. You have 10 fouls to give. And that's exactly what, it's almost like Hurley listened to my dad. It's exactly what he did. He let Edey go off, and they had 10 fouls. Johnson fouled out, and Klingon ended up with 4. And they even put Karaban on him when Karaban took two elbows to the face. Side note, when he was defending Edey, they just don't blow the whistle when Edey's playing basketball, apparently, unless the call goes his way. But this team, I mean, Edey got tired. You could tell how winded he was when he traveled with like 7 minutes to go in the first half. He traveled because he just wasn't there physically. Nothing against Edey, 7'4". I can imagine being 7'4" and over 300 pounds going up and down the court chasing this fucking team around. But the fact that he got tired, he started getting flat-footed, he started missing bunnies, and even though Klingon didn't get anything in his favor, it just, you could tell that they were getting physically worn down. And all the credit to UConn's, I went back and watched a little bit of the game and all the highlights, and I was looking at the box score. Edey had 14 garbage points. So he finished with 37. 14 of those points were garbage. They were dunks at the end when the game was already 17, 18, 16. And UConn just wasn't going to stop the clock and put him on the free throw line. And Karaban was guarding him, who was almost a foot shorter than the guy. You know what I mean? So they literally held Edey to real-time statistics of probably like 23 and 8, 23 and 9, which Hurley said, everyone else beat me because he didn't believe they could, and they couldn't. They couldn't even get a shot off.
He was right.
And they had 6 foot and 6'1" starting backcourt. How are you supposed to do anything against Castle, who you could argue he was the best defender in college basketball when Hurley told him to defend? When Hurley said, go guard that guy, you were fucking done. Like 1 for 7 3-point range for Purdue. Like they literally ate them alive.
And a Purdue team that averaged making over 8 a game in the tournament. And they held them to 7 attempts, 1 make. And you said that size, and size was a huge, huge factor in the game. I mean, there were 2 threes that were blocked on the outside by Karaban towards the end of the game. Like, he was just playing great defense. He had the size and just rejected him. Spencer getting 8 rebounds in the championship game. I mean, that size was a problem. UConn dialed up the defense in the second half. They dialed up the offensive rebounding in the second half, and those types of things. You know, Purdue would force UConn into a miss, but they'd get an extra possession out of it, and usually would get a bucket out of it. And that completely took Purdue out of the game in the second half. They could compete when UConn wasn't getting offensive rebounds, and they'd get a miss, and they'd come down, and they'd still be able to get 2 and 2 and 2. But by the end of the game, they had worn them down. They were tired. UConn wasn't. They're never tired. They're relentless. They were able to keep jumping, getting those rebounds, getting those loose balls, fighting for extra possessions, and that ultimately changed everything and ended it.
Yeah, I mean, Purdue's only 3-point attempt that was made was literally a last gasp 3 with a hand in his face to avoid a shot clock violation in the first half. Legitimately, that's their first 3. Was just to toss it up. Because we're at the end of the shot clock, are we going to be able to do anything? That was their only made 3-pointer. I mean, now, when Braden Smith threw the Hail Mary at the end of the half, did that count as a 3-point attempt? It probably statistically it counted. So really, they were legitimately 1 for 6 instead of 1 for 7 because that didn't. I mean, no one's throwing one in from the other free throw line.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. But regardless, if I told you last night, dude, and the thing is, it was a tale of 2 halves, right? We just grinded him in the first half and got him tired. Spencer was a fucking nightmare for them in the first half. Got anywhere he wanted to on the court, used his freaking body. The kids smooth as silk shooting the ball. And in the second half, that's when they just sunk their teeth in. It was just impossible. And Painter even said after the game, he goes, when we got down double digits, we were just rushing and we had nowhere to go. Listen, that Lawyer kid had 0 points. They had Edey and their point guard Braden Smith, had 49 of their 60. So they had 11 points combined from the rest of the entire team. If I told you before the game that Caravan was only going to score 5, but we still were going to score 75 and beat him by 15, I probably would have scratched my head a little bit. Like, they bageled guys on the other side. Like, bageled it. And it's just, and like I said, this game was never this close. If fishing was fair, it was 25-30, which that really was what it was. But I want to go back. There's one thing I got an axe to grind, and this is one thing I'm going to say. And I'm not being like a dick or anything like that. But people, it's the same thing I say with college football. Michigan finally did it this year. I always said when someone other than the SEC wins, then I'm sorry. So the SEC wins it every year. You can't, other teams get no credit. No small school should get in. Notre Dame doesn't ever belong in the college football playoff because they're not there. They're not on the same level, those teams. Michigan finally broke the mold and got a title, and what happened? Harbaugh left instantaneously, which it will be determined if that title even stands in a few years. That's neither here nor there. But the same thing for college basketball. I said it earlier in the show. The Big Ten hasn't won a national championship in 25 years. There's a reason for that. And the thing that just rubbed me the wrong way the whole year was how much hate UConn got and how much love Purdue received. And one man and one man alone pisses me off more than anything. Joe Lunardi all year long had Purdue as the number 1 overall seed. UConn's gonna bitch. The Big East is gonna bitch. Blah, blah, blah. Purdue, metrics. Fuck the metrics. Use your eyeballs. Joe Lunardi.
Yeah.
You had Purdue as the number 1 overall seed all year except for like one time, and then UConn lost to Creighton, and you instantly snapped them right back to Purdue. Look at what's on the floor. Look at the talent disparity of those two teams last night. Purdue wouldn't even have won the Big East if they played in the Big East. And here's the other thing, Joe Lunardi. Your national champion was from the Big East, UConn, and your NIT champion that you fucking said, don't cry, they didn't belong in the tournament. A team that beat UConn. Seton Hall won the NIT. So the 2 major basketball tournaments postseason were won by Big East teams. But it's amazing. Joe Lunardi gets to say whatever he wants all the way up until Selection Sunday, and then he shuts the fuck up, and we haven't heard a fucking peep from the guy. Not an article, not a this, nothing. He put his foot in his mouth so bad this year, and he's done it multiple times in the past. No, Seton Hall belonged in the tournament, okay? They won the NIT. Okay, and that's a shitty tournament to win because you don't get anything. They got rid of the Madison Square Garden. 8 teams declined the NIT this year. And you know what Lunardi said? Because he's a little bitch. Those teams should be banned or punished from postseason basketball because they declined the invitation because they were bitter that they didn't make the tournament. Well, hey, Joe Lunardi, you got 2 postseason tournaments, 2 Big East champions. Okay, so shut up, take a hike, get a new job, because I know more about college basketball than Joe Lunardi knows, and he gets paid way more money than I do to look like a smart person, but he's really a jackass on television, okay?
Wow. Man, coming in hot. I love the take. That's great. He's probably hanging out in the bunker, the bracket bunker right now, getting ready for 2025. Pencil in UConn to the Final Four, man. That's all I have to say. Pencil in UConn to the Final Four. Let's do it.
Yeah, he's probably got his way too early bracketology out for next year. Guaranteed UConn's not on the 1 line. Guaranteed they're probably a 4 seed because they're going to use the same excuse they did last year when we won the title. They lost 5 of their top 6 scorers. They lost 3 starters. Well, this year could be even more drastic. We may lose our top 6 players, period. Castle's going pro. Klingen's going to go pro. He left He made $20 million by staying for his sophomore year. Oh, and he won a national title. Okay. Newton's graduating. I don't care what anybody said. That kid has got a spot on an NBA roster. That kid can fucking play basketball. Tristan Newton, at his size, he is smooth as silk. He can prove to you that he goes into the lane against 7-footers. He's 6'6" or 6'5". He can shoot the jump shot. He's unflappable. He loves being pressured, by the way. Tristan Newton, when's the last time you saw him turn the fucking basketball over? Seriously, unless it was like a long football pass trying to make it. Last time somebody guarded that motherfucker and turned him over. Didn't happen last night. It didn't happen against Alabama. This dude is back-to-back Final Four's most outstanding player. Who's the last player to do that? I don't even know. Grant Hill, maybe? Did Grant Hill win both? I mean, I know UConn owns the other record when Stewie went
sure.
4 for 4 when she won 4 titles, but name the last time someone went back-to-back. I mean, the kid's going to play basketball. Caravan, I don't know. He's not fast enough. He's got a quirky shot. He fits the college game great, but he would get drafted, I would imagine, in the first 2 rounds if he went pro. I don't know if he's guaranteed a roster spot in an NBA, but you're telling me, Diarra is probably not a pro player. It's too small, but Diarra was a spark plug all year long. 6 man, deservingly so, the 6th man of the year in the Big East.
Mm-hmm.
But Castle, you got 2 lottery picks on this team. I mean, and the other thing I will say about Clingan, did he get picked on a little bit by Edey last night? Yeah, Edey used to just be bigger, 7'4", and probably had 30 pounds on him. But in the NBA, that back to the basket center doesn't exist. It's so rare to see that. And Clingan almost hit a 3 last night. So if you're talking draft stock, if you think UConn is fast, Zach Edey, wait till you step on an NBA floor and see how fast they fucking play basketball.
Joel Embiid or something.
It's not. I mean, it's unbelievable. Those guys are so fast. I mean, I'll tell you that the center model in the NBA, not to talk NBA because I don't really follow a ton, but you listen to all these other places. Like those NBA guys are just a different breed. The center can shoot threes. The center can put you on the block if he wants to. The center can shoot free throws. The center can shoot mid-range. Like Edey doesn't do anything unless it's within 4 feet of the basket and free throws. He doesn't do anything else. Nothing against him. The kid's a great college player. Mm-hmm. But to me, he just doesn't do anything else unless it's a dunk or a layup or a baby hook. He doesn't shoot fucking mid-range. He doesn't shoot threes. He didn't do anything. And he got exposed from an athletic standpoint. It's nothing against him. His genetics are his genetics. He's 7'4".
Yeah. Dude, at the end of the day, man, there's great college players and there's great professional players. College football is the same way, right? Tim Tebow, one of the greatest college football players of all time. NFL wasn't his jam. And there's plenty other guys who were incredible in college football that didn't translate to the NFL, and that's okay. Same thing in college basketball. I mean, dude, Shabazz Napier from UConn took over college basketball for a long stretch of time. Put a team on his back, won a national championship. Didn't have a big career afterwards. Same thing with Zach Edey. Like that's probably, he'll find a spot in a roster. I'm pretty confident in that. But yeah, he's not going to have the same dominance, I don't think, that he had in college basketball, but he was a hell of a dominant college basketball player. From what he started with as a freshman to where he finished as a senior, dude. I mean, listen, he went out there, he did what he needed to do. He got rebounds, he blocked shots, he got points, he drew fouls on guys. Like, he was great. Just UConn shut down the rest of the team. And he hadn't played another big guy like Clingan in a very long time. I can't remember when. And Clingan manned up with him. Yeah, he got a lot of points on Clingan, no doubt about it. But Clingan made it hard for him, and he wore him out. And that's okay. He was a great college basketball player. You know what? He probably was deserving of the National Player of the Year. The way he kind of stepped in, especially the way he played in the tournament throughout the entire tournament. He dominated, man. There was no doubt about it. I think he ended third or fourth on the list, all-time points in the tournament. He's now, I think, second on the list for 2010 games in a row in the tournament. So he was definitely dominant. Great college player. We'll see what he does at the next level. But I think Clingan certainly has the higher ceiling, no doubt about that.
You know what's crazy too about this UConn team. So the all-tournament team came out last night, right? They always have the all-tournament team. And you literally had Edey, deserving so. The other 4 guys on the all-tournament team were fucking from UConn. Castle, Newton, Spencer, and Clingan. Like, that just speaks to the dominance of this basketball team. The other thing I'll say is, like, when you listen to the guys after the game, like Reese Davis and Jay Will and Greenberg and Barkley and Kenny, and like the one thing that they said, can you even name a bad shot that UConn's taken in the last 2 years? And I stopped and scratched my head. Even when it's late in the shot clock, they take good shots. Like they run their offense, like you said. like an NBA team almost with the finesse and the movement, and they wear you down. You know, they hurt you offensively because how much they move on the offense, it wears you down defensively, which in turn hurts you offensively because like they
Mm-hmm.
were showing some of those cuts, dude. The guys never stop moving. Around, motion, high pick and roll, drop it down, mid range. They never stop moving. They never. You'll never catch them standing still.
No, you're 100% right, dude. Their offense just moves all the time. Everybody. And they always find the best shot. You know, they'll run their offense for 15, 20 seconds and then go get a shot. They'll just wear the shot clock down. And I think it was Barkley who said it the night of the Alabama game. And he was saying that UConn, or maybe it was Kenny Smith, I don't remember. It was one of them. That UConn, when they get to 15 seconds or left on the shot clock, they're unbeatable. If they hold their possessions to under 15 seconds on the shot clock, they're unbeatable because they always make the right decision, find the open guy. They're almost too unselfish to a fault. Like they're always kicking it around, moving it, and sometimes it causes a turnover. But they're always looking to get the ball to somebody else. Which, dude, there's no other team like that right now. You watch so many games in the NCAA tournament where it's just ISO ball.
Yeah,
just people just ISO, and they just take one-on-one, take it to the hoop. At UConn. And it proved to work. Now, you went on a bit of a rant before, and I'm going to go on one. And I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. The fact that Tristan Newton wasn't named the Big East Player of the Year award winner this year and Devin Carter was is an absolute travesty. Nothing against Devin Carter. He's a hell of a basketball player, had an incredible season. Tristan Newton won the Big East Tournament MVP award. He won the Final Four Most Outstanding Player award. He was in the conversation for Naismith Player of the Year award with Zach Edey. There is zero reason that he didn't win that award this year. It's absolute bullshit. It goes back to the hate for UConn that you mentioned before. I don't know why. Nobody ever does that. Nobody ever did that shit to Duke and Carolina and Kentucky in their own conference. Like, it is crazy to me that he didn't win that award. And he's in my eyes, he's still the true Big East Player of the Year because he absolutely dominated this year. And then my other thing that I'm going to bitch about, the fact that Dan Hurley didn't win the AP Coach of the Year award. Now, he won the Naismith Coach of the Year award, which is great, but he didn't win the AP Coach of the Year award. That got given to Kelvin Sampson. And it, again, blows my mind. Back-to-back national champion. Now, when the award came out, he wasn't a back-to-back national champion, but he was still in the tournament, and Kelvin Sampson wasn't at that point when that award came out. To reload your roster after you lost 3 guys to the NBA, to come back and be better, be more dominant than you were the year before, is just a slap in the face. And those 2 awards should have gone to Huskies. When you're this dominant of a team, there's zero reason you don't win those awards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they could have won every award, and the Big East Player of the Year was a travesty. But the thing that maybe pisses me off more about Tristan Newton, yeah, he was a first-team All-American, but I almost felt like they gave him that out of spite because all year long, Harris from Kansas, the freaking guy from fucking Davis from North Carolina, all these guys got all the accolades for best point guard. None of those dudes played basketball like Tristan Newton. None of them. Nope. Sorry. Kansas, dumpster fire. Okay. North Carolina, and we beat them by double digits in the regular season, embarrassed in the fucking tournament. You know what I mean? By Alabama. They got run off the floor. They got beat at their own game in a high scoring game in the 80s. So yeah, they deserve all the awards this year. Every single award that could potentially have been given out outside of Player of the Year, I'll give it to Edey. Take it with a grain of salt because it was the Big Ten. And I just don't think Edey would have had the same success as he did in the Big Ten if he played in the Big East. Not saying that Purdue wouldn't have been probably wouldn't have been a 1 seed, but I mean, I really like what college basketball does. Usually with these early season tournaments, the best teams usually play each other. UConn's never played Purdue in one of these tournaments, but play North Carolina, you play Kansas, you play, it's what college basketball does so well. The women do it even better than the men do. The women's college basketball, because they know they need to pull ratings, and UConn plays South Carolina, UConn plays Notre Dame, UConn plays Duke, UConn plays Tennessee. You know what I mean? The women do it better than the men do because they don't have a choice. But the men, but that's one thing that college basketball does do well. The best teams play each other. What I wish would happen though is I wish some of those games. I know because of the whole setup of conference play. College football, you always have one good neutral site game usually. The SEC, obviously, every weekend in the SEC is a good game. But, I wish in college basketball, UConn and Kansas could have been played in February or June. You know what I mean? They would move some of those games around to where they're later in the season. You know what I mean? Almost like a floating, this is hypothetical and it's a pipe dream, but you pencil in January 17th as the floater game, and whoever the top 6 teams are in the country, they play against each other that weekend. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. And that would be cool to add a little bit of, it takes them away from their conference for a weekend, and it puts a prize matchup late in the season. You know what I mean? Almost like a test of who the hell's really tournament ready if these guys end up playing each other in March, kind of thing. I don't know. I think it would be pretty cool. But overall,
that would be pretty
really quickly, I want to go first, and then I want your response. I want your response right after I go. This is shot out of a cannon, no holds bar, no details, no arguments, yes or no. I'm going to give you mine, then I want you to give me yours. And I want to list the 6 national championships in order of where you think these teams are all time. Number 1, 99. Number 2, 2024. Number 3, 2004. Number 4, 2023. Number 5, 2014. And number 6, 2011.
Are you saying UConn teams all time?
Yeah.
Just where they fall in order? Yeah.
National champion.
That's the correct order.
National championship teams. That's the...
Boy, that's tough. Gosh, that's tough. I'm going to say 04, 99, 24. Yeah. 04, 99, 24, 14, 11. Or no, 23, and then 14, 11.
Yeah. Well, 11's the last.
I think that 04 team was, yeah, that 04 team was just crazy. I thought that team
was really good.
They had the National Player of the Year with Emeka Okafor, then Gordon, and that team was so good. And then, the 99 team, Rip Hamilton, dude. I'd be the greatest Husky of all time. I mean, dude.
Oh God, we're not doing that debate right now.
One thing I want to touch on real quick before we shut this thing down. I just think it's awesome that all the players come back to the Final Four, all the big names. I sent you a picture that had Rip, Ray, Okafor, Charlie Villanueva, Kevin Freeman, Khalid El-Amin, dude, all the way back to the first championship. The culture that UConn has, I don't think is like anything else in sports. I absolutely love it. Calhoun taking pictures with Hurley after the game with the trophy. Dude, Ray Allen, even though he didn't win a championship at UConn, he was one of the guys who laid the foundation for where UConn hoops is today. And the fact that he gets to be there celebrating with all those guys that did win the championships that came after him. And he's just treated like another one of the greats. And because he is another one of the greats, he might be the greatest basketball player to ever come through UConn. And he never won a national championship. I just absolutely love seeing that. They all love coming back, supporting their teammates, supporting the new guys, and just being there for them, answering questions and being present for them. Dude, just awesome. Absolutely awesome.
In UConn, this is my final quote, and then you can take us home. This is my final piece that I want to say, and I don't think there can be any argument. UConn, Storrs, Connecticut is the college basketball mecca right now. I don't care what anybody says. Since 1995, the UConn women have won 11 titles. Gino could argue is the best coach, men's or women's, of all time. Gino's got 11 titles and 23 or 24 Final Fours. UConn's got, the men have 6 national championships and 7 appearances in the Final Four. So between the two teams, there are 17 national championships. They like to say that Lambeau is title town for the Packers. Storrs, Connecticut is the mecca of college basketball.
Yeah, dude, you're 100% right. So well said. I'm going to end it on one thing. We're full force fathers, right? One of the things we talk about is finances all the time. I want you all to go out there and find a job that does something like this. So Dan Hurley's got a base salary, okay? His base salary. Now we're talking millions of dollars here, so you can break it down. Whatever range you're in is fine. But go find you a job that you can get incentives like this, okay? Base salary, $5 million. Win the Big East regular season title, $100K bump. Win the Big East title, another $100K bump. Be a top 10 team, $150K bump. Get a tourney bid, $50K. Win the first round, $50K. Sweet 16, $100K. Elite 8, $200K. Final Four, $200K. Make it to a title game, another $200K. Win the title, $500K. Hey, win the Big East Coach of the Year, would you? $50K. And then win the Naismith Award for Coach of the Year. That's another $100K. Grand total, $6.8 million. So we've raised this base from 5, and he got 6.8 out the door. Everybody, UConn is the national champion. Thank you for enjoying this special episode. Share this to other UConn fans out there, or maybe fans that you don't like from Purdue or Kentucky or UCLA or some of those other teams that think that they're blue buds that aren't the UConn Huskies anymore. And we'll see you next week.